Alright, I'm here to talk about being a Pentester from a couple of years worth of experience doing it professionally. So a bit about me. I'm Topaz or Topy. I've been a senior security consultant for the past few years at Luke Secure and a junior introduction consultant for the years prior to that. Been there for about 8 years now. And prior to that, I was a network admin at a bunch of different companies, partially doing virtualization, Citrix, Xena stuff. I'm also an organizer for OzSecCon as well as a staff member for most of the other conferences in Australia, mostly community conferences. Coming up next, AppSec Day, which some of you may go to, so I'll see you there as well. First off, I thought I'd talk about the boring work that we do, which is the not fun stuff, and then I'll go into the more fun stuff, more general stuff that we do. We spend a lot of time doing client-facing work, and that client-facing work includes things like scoping calls, determining how much work we're going to do for a project, and determining whether or not it's within the client's budget, within our timeframes. Also proposal writing, which is basically transforming that stuff from our notes into a proposal for them to read and then hopefully sign off and accept. And then once we've actually done the work, we do a lot of report writing, and that usually occupies about 20% of the time, depending on how bad and how messed up their network is. If the network's really bad, then that can blow out to enormous report, like we're talking 300-400 pages of bespoke vulnerabilities. If it's a small report and there's nothing wrong with the network, then sweet, we can write up a couple of pages and that's about it. We also spend a bit of time managing our own internal network, so admin skills from the network and server admin side both come into play, a bit of knowledge of firewalls, a bit of knowledge of Windows networks, and a bit of knowledge of Linux computers. All helps a lot. We are a subset of a large company, and most pen testing firms nowadays run more than one type of service. Specifically, my employer, they run other integration services, SOC analyst services, and so we try and keep our rather hostile network away from the rest of the network. That results in a bit of overhead for us to manage that without draining other company resources. General kind of run-of-the-mill work that we do a lot of web application testing. That's basically our bread and butter. I think you find most pen testing firms spend a lot of time looking at the external attack surface companies. We do a lot of infrastructure testing, which both applies to the external and internal side. Primarily when we do internal testing, we're doing that on-site application of the client because we want the best speed and most reliability. We don't want to have additional hops between our machine that we're testing from and the machines that we're testing. If any of you have looked into how programs like Nmap work and map network infrastructure and determine what services are available, some of those tests are actually done based on timing attacks, or very precise measuring of timing. So it matters where you are in the network relative to the assets that you're trying to look at. Wi-Fi testing is something we do a bit of here and there. It's not the most interesting testing because there's a very defined number of attacks unless you're spending time researching your attacks, which as a general pen testing thing you won't be doing. There's not too much to see. Most networks are pretty good. Most people don't use home routers in corporate networks, but you still see weird things where people do use home routers from 10 years ago and they have web or open networks or other weird things. So a lot of that kind of general work ends up being us just validating that yes, things are okay, they're not on fire, you didn't screw up really badly. We do a little bit of SCADA testing as well. That involves a lot of the industrial control systems you see. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. I don't, but other people on our team do a lot more mobile testing. Mobile testing involves Android and iOS testing of specific applications, bypassing the protections on that and looking for weird misconfigurations, things like passwords and crypto keys left in applications that shouldn't be, API endpoints exposed, and that becomes API testing as well, which is kind of a subset of web app testing. AppSec, so reverse engineering, looking at thick clients, looking for vulnerabilities, which also goes hand-in-hand with the code review side of things, which we don't do a lot of because most people are implementing other people's products and not designing their own. And we do a little bit of our own internal development for making things like new tools to exploit stuff or to improve our processes around things like reporting, which would otherwise take a lot of time. If we can automate parts of that, then that makes things a lot easier for us. The fun work we do, involves physical security testing and social engineering, where we will try and get into buildings. We'll try and get into buildings, then into their server rooms, into the IT areas, into areas that we're not supposed to be into. And usually the clients will give us a list of places that we shouldn't be in, but they want us to see if we can get into. Combination of different attacks can be used to get into that. Some digital, some physical, and some social. Phishing also kind of falls into that social engineering category as well. All of that combined with the other stuff mentioned before becomes what we consider a red team, where you do whatever you want to do to try and get into the target organization infrastructure. And we spend how much time the client's willing to give us to try and do that. Some of the tools that we use, which you may not be familiar with, some of these cost a lot of money, so it's unlikely you would come across them. Some of them are free, and I highly recommend learning them. There are cracked versions of things like IDA out there, which you may have come across. Of course, nobody here would use that. Things like Burp Suite Pro, Nessus Pro, stuff like that, you won't have the latest updates if you use cracked versions, so it's not really going to give you a representative look at things, but it will give you a cursory look at things. When you work for a consultancy, most of those things, probably with the exception of Cobalt Strike, will be stuff that you will have access to. Empire, Wireshark, Nmap, Metasploit, they're all free, they're all excellent. You should spend a lot of time basically learning all of these where you can. Things like the browsers that you use, be very familiar with, Chrome, Firefox. Spend a lot of time learning about the debug features they have and how they work and how they interact with the environments that you're using, because the more you understand about how they do things, the more you understand about why web developers do weird things. The actual shells that you use on Windows, on Linux, on OS X, whatever your environment is that you like, spend a lot of time looking at that and understanding how to navigate around that. And your operating systems of choice, people use OS X, it's basically just another version of Linux. Kali has all the tools that you really need, plus a lot that you don't. And Windows, which I use basically for my everything, and I spin everything up under a VM. Windows is what networks are run on in the real world, not in the university world, not in the lab world. So learn how to use Windows, and you might hate it, that's fair. There's a lot of reasons to hate it, but you need to know it. And if you don't know it, you're not going to be pen testing anything. Things like SMB and RDP, you can make work with Linux and other variants, but you can just use it natively with Windows, so why wouldn't you? We also have a lot of hardware tools. Hardware can vary from site-to-site, engagement to engagement, but some of the common things we'll see will come on site with maybe 2 laptops, one for connecting into the network, one for researching and doing other dev stuff outside the network without touching the infrastructure. The usual assortment of cables and adapters for whatever we can think of, whatever we might know is there. Some clients will give us advanced warning as to what kind of things we'll need. Sometimes they don't. If they don't, then we just bring more stuff and leave it in a hotel. Hardware keyloggers, they're small and effective. Alpha Wi-Fi cards, if you've done any Wi-Fi pen testing, you've probably come across these. The Hack5 kit, if you've seen things like pineapples, rubber duckies, that kind of stuff. Very useful. And DMA, which I'll show you a photo of in a second and explain. That's 2 different types of USB and PS2 serial keyloggers. It's an Alpha Wi-Fi card. That's what Hack5 gear looks like. And this is what DMA hardware is. This is something we just started playing around with recently. These are boards designed to plug into computers that allow you to read and write to RAM live on the system. If you can do that, you can dump passwords, you can bypass authentication, you can do all kinds of fun things that you shouldn't be able to do. But because you have physical access to a machine, you can do whatever you want. It's literally like interfacing straight with the RAM. So DMA means direct memory access. That's what you get. The big board costs about as much as your laptop probably does, but it gives you full access to all RAM, no matter how big the RAM is on that machine. The smaller board, which will connect to Thunderbolt, to USB-C, to FireWire, to basically any bus that has DMA access, but will only give you 4 gig of read and write. So if your target system has 32 gig, you've got a significantly smaller shot than if your system has only 4 gig. So there's some limitations to that. For physical testing, we have a bunch of other bits and pieces that we like to use. Throwing style LAN tap, you may have seen. is passive line tap, which allows us to get around things like MAC address filtering on network switches. You plug in your device passively watching traffic as another device will connect into the switch. When it does, it will broadcast its MAC address saying, hey, I'm here, this is me, sends it back. You can then unplug that device, point it onto your machine, and then plug it back in, good to go. Lockpicks, I spend a lot of time doing physical stuff. That's my kind of side hobby in addition to the network side of things. Helps to be proficient with those. Under the door tools and door shims are both two types of bypass tools, which negates the need for lockpicks. Proxmark is a RFID cloning device. If you've seen those before, you know they're quite effective. You can manipulate usual prox cards that you'll see on the vast majority of buildings. There's a bunch of other radio equipment and SDRs that are probably a bit outside of the scope of this, but it's all application specific depending on what kind of environment we're looking at. If we're looking at specific hardware, sometimes we're looking at Bluetooth stuff, sometimes we're looking at radio communication between guards. Helps to know how to program those and how to play with those to see what's happening. And the whole point of the physical stuff here is to get into and onto a network and then use the other tools that I listed before. That's a LAN tap. Those are lockpicks. It's an under the door tool. These are bypass shims. That's Proxmark. Something you should be aware of. We find there's a lot of interesting research papers that come out from universities around the world about weird side channel attacks and fun vulnerabilities that involve leaking crypto keys one bit at a time over several hours when they make the same encrypted email 10,000 times in a row. That's really cool, and it's interesting to note that that's a thing, but in the real world, the client doesn't care. You don't have the time or the funds to set up the laboratory environment to test that, to exploit that one big machine. And in the real world, you've got 3 machines next to each other, so it's really hard to pin down like some small radio wave emanating from a weird capacitor, like out of those 3 machines, which one's doing it, you don't know. So if you try and report on stuff like that, the client will probably laugh at you, be like, nice vulnerability, get out, don't come back. Our standard kind of engagements, week to week, this varies a fair bit, but generally, external infrastructure size, we'll look at about 1,000 IPs in a week. Clients don't want to pay for you to sit there for 3 months to look at one asset. That might be nice, and you might want to do that, but you don't get the money to do that. Nobody's going to pay you to do that. So there's a certain trade-off between how much time you can spend, how much money the client is willing to let you spend, and then what you're actually going to find. And they want to try and get as much as they can in the shortest amount of time, the cheapest cost possible. So a lot of automation is required, and a lot of knowledge as to what you're doing, and how to automate the boring bits and the repetitive parts, and how to make sure that you can optimize things that are time consuming. So your scans that you might be making from an external IP, you want the fastest bandwidth connection available. So you don't want to be doing that from your home ADSL connection. You want to be doing that from a server with a gig up, gig down pipe. If you don't have access to that, then it's going to take maybe 10 times longer. So that means your cost is going to be 10 times higher than the client, and clients who are interested in hiring you then. External applications, it really depends on the size of the application. So when we spend a lot of time scoping, we'll be looking at the types of web applications they have hosted, and from those web applications, what's actually being hosted, how big and complex those applications are, and then what we expect the amount of time taken will take to test that. Internally, because you have a nice gigabit connection or if you bring multiple computers, we'll test up to a /14 within a week, which is quite a large number of IPs. Usually we'll do that in 5 working days, and we'll have about 2 days extra for reporting at the end of that. In most larger corporate environments, and older companies especially, there's 2 types of technologies really being used. You got Java and .NET, and that's pretty much because for the past 20 odd years, universities have taught Java or .NET, and they haven't taught anything else. And so nobody else bothers to learn anything else. Sometimes you learn C, and then you see C in the real environment, and that's just fucking awful. So, in the real world as well, most servers and workstations and Windows, there's no like Linux desktop environment not unless you're in a weird dev shop or like some cutting edge startup kind of thing. And it does happen, but it's really rare. It's really, really rare. Most network infrastructure is also Cisco based. And even if it's not Cisco based, it kind of runs like a Cisco. So it might have Cisco vulnerabilities, but the config basically acts the same. So if you know how to read Cisco config, you can read most network configs. If you have a chance, look at doing a CCNA. Even if you don't have an interest in becoming a network administrator, CCNA is a really good fundamental course on network infrastructure and learning how to read and write to Cisco environments. It will teach you a lot, make you less scared of making changes to systems. A couple of stories. So we did a job 5 years ago now at a bank, not a big four bank, small bank, regional bank. We got there, we were on site, and the client sat down with us and said, all right, we've got a bunch of assets that we're not sure if they'll even handle you scanning them. We're pretty sure they'll just die if you touch them. So like, all right, cool, we'll avoid those. They give us a list of IPs. List of IPs were a bunch of exclusions, and we're like, all right, we'll deal with those very last, and if we have time, test them gently. And this is a very big network, so all right, there's probably not even a need to test them. The scans we kicked off, sequentially going through the environment, starting at 10.0.0.1, and in the end, well, all the /8, so we're there for 4 weeks. About 2 days in, the first lot of scans drop the UPS management interface, so they can't tell if their servers have power or not remotely. And they're a little bit freaked out about that, and the IT admin comes in, and he's a very angry man. This dude, angry man. Comes in, he's like, you killed our network interface on this thing. I was like, oh, it wasn't in the exclusions. He's like, yeah, well, stop your scans. I'm like, okay, so we pause the scans, they get it back up and running. Cool, all is well, we resume scanning, we ignore that little range because we know now that there's no interfaces. A couple days later, the dude comes in again, and he's screaming at us this time, and he said, you just dropped all of our file servers. I'm like, what? How? It's like, well, the IP address is 10.1.2.3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm like, we're scanning sequentially, so we've dropped one, even though it's a failover cluster, all of them have sequentially dropped and haven't come back up. So because they haven't really decided how to partition up the interfaces, everything's dead. And so nobody has any files in this bank, and that's a bit serious. Anyway, dude's freaking out. He spitfired us, and we're like, sorry, we didn't expect that to happen, and neither did you, so what can we do? Nothing we do, we exclude that from our further scans and carry on. Anyway, that happens once more. We dropped their VoIP network as well, because they've obviously never tested that. This is the first test this bank's ever had, by the way, so they don't know what's going on. We get there, it's fine. At this point, the guy's just constantly coming in, and every time something hiccups, he's blaming us for everything being dead. Cool. He's not our point of contact, he's just the head of IT. He's not the C-level guy that we're talking to who's hired us. So he's overruled, his boss says you're going to continue scanning because that's what our mandate is. All right, we keep doing that. We end up showing a bunch of different things in the network and getting domain administrator access on this bank. But they have some security controls. One of the security controls they have is a secret server, which is a really nice piece of software which protects all your passes. Basically like a giant key pass database server. If you ever see it in an environment, it's a real pain to get into. So the person who has the most access to that environment happens to be the head of IT, because he's the head of IT. So we shell his computer, and then we keylog his computer, and then he logs in, and we get his password. At the end of the 4-week engagement, we give a debrief of our results. And at some point, somehow he's found out that we've keylogged his computer. He doesn't know anything about it, but he's aware that we have. He's a very angry man. He's red. And he's there with the CIO and the CSO both sitting there being like, so how bad is this environment? This is probably the worst, and it was. It was really one of the worst environments at that point that I'd ever tested, especially given the fact it's a bank and their production credit card servers, hey, you just hop onto them, there's no authentication. Access the file share. and all the backups there. Everyone's everything ever. Cool. Wild. This guy's freaking out. Everyone's like in damage control mode. And at the end of that, I'm like, well, we're never getting that job again. We're toast. We have the job again next year. And really surprised. I thought they would never want to talk to us again, but they did. And we came back 4 years in a row. And each year they improved just a little bit, like a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. They went from having one of the worst networks I've seen to probably one of the best I've seen in a long time. And it took them 4 years to get it, but it actually worked out. And that really surprised me. Like, when I started there, I wasn't sure that they could do it. And a lot of our clients, we'll get them for 1 or 2 years and they'll switch providers, so you never really know what happens. We signed a long-term contract with these guys, and it was nice to see the outcome was actually they got better security, and they really committed to like making a big difference. So that was cool. Another one was we did a test on a mining/energy company, and these guys had a few pen tests done before internally themselves, but only on certain subsets. When they'd had that done, they kind of tested the desktop ranges, a couple of specific server ranges, whatever else. But we came in and we're like, all right, we'll test all the things, and that was the plan. We knew they were a mining company, and so we're like, do you guys have any SCADA assets available on the network? And they're like, nah, they're all locked off, that's fine, they're all segmented away. Cool, all right. So we start scanning, and I start seeing in our scans SCADA results. I'm like, that's not good. That shouldn't be accessible. At that point, everyone's kind of running back and forth, very rushed looking, and we go, oh, what's going on? And admin dude comes in, is like, you've got to stop everything right now. Like, you dropped all these things. And so we've dropped a gold mine, and we've dropped a power station. that's one of the resume there. They were not supposed to be accessible, so the admin team had messed that up, and the firewalling team had not implemented that change like they thought they had, and so those ports were still accessible on a few of those devices. It wasn't all devices, it was just a small subset, but those ones were critical ones, the critical infrastructure, they're out. We asked at the debrief, like, what was the outcome of that? They just said, it just cost us a fuck ton of money, we don't even know. And I don't know, it took them a month and a half to work out, and I don't know, it was millions and millions of dollars. So, them not being aware of their network infrastructure cooked them. And yeah, scary time. That was earlier last year, so we're due for another test. What makes a good pen tester? So, a bunch of different things, and every pen tester you'll meet has their own different strengths and weaknesses. As a general overview, probably one of the best things to have is a strong background in either the defense or the network administration side. A lot of people here, I suspect, will probably want to jump into being a pen tester straight out of uni. That's fine, you can do that. But it really helps to be a developer, it really helps to be a sysadmin, it really helps to be a blue team defender, to understand all the challenges that go with defending an actual network and maintaining a network and doing stuff on a network, because it's really easy to write a report saying all your shit's on fire and you're fucked. But actually, like, understanding what the client is dealing with and what they can actually realistically do, you can't tell them to spend $1 million on getting like a managed service with Telstra to sit there and monitor all their stuff 24/7. Like, they're not going to do that. They should do that, but they're not going to because they don't have the budget for it. So you understand what they can realistically do and how much they can actually afford. And if you haven't been in one of those other positions, you don't really know. And the same with developers, like, you've got to be able to understand whether or not their in-house developers have any idea what security is and just missed something, or if they really are just entirely clueless and they've got to go and do some coding first or hire somebody else to give them a hand. All of the stuff that you find has to be communicated to two types of people, and that's to technical resources, the ones going to fix the stuff. So you're going to be able to explain how you did what you did, how they can replicate that, and then also how they can fix that based on your understanding, and then also summarize what you've done to a C-level or to a management who doesn't have any technical ability at all. And if you can't do both of those things, your report's going to suck, and your job's going to be really hard because you're constantly going to get grief from everyone else, basically. And yeah, strong technical skills. it's really hard to say you need to know one technology in a specific area unless that's your specific role. If you're just a reverse engineer and you're just doing AppSec stuff, fine. But if you want to do general pen testing on any network that you come across, you have to be able to learn the technologies in that environment really quickly. And starting from scratch and not knowing anything about how this would normally be implemented, because you haven't done sysadmin, you haven't done defense, you haven't done development stuff, that makes life a lot harder for you to pick up those skills fast. Not that you can't, it's just going to make it more complex for you. Outside of work, research and kind of self-development on your own things is something that's really important. All of the things that relate to pen testing take time. And if you don't have a lot of time, I'm not sure that you can do pen testing as a professional job. There's plenty of other security jobs, but if you aren't keen on devoting basically all of your spare time to pen testing, it's going to be really hard. Wake up, read all the different things that have come out that day on NetSec or on Hacker News or on whatever. Find all different feeds to keep up to date with the latest exploits, the latest vulnerabilities. There's more conferences now than there are people, pretty much. Like, there's more material to read and listen and watch and understand than you can consume. So you have to figure out a way to sift through that and find what's relevant to you. And from that, well, then you want to try it. So you found a new cool way to do cross-site scripting. Fine. Well, you have to spin up an instance of something that you can actually practice that on and see, yes, that's how it works. Yes, that works in this case, and on this case, that's how you get good at it. Spending a lot of time with the community. There's a lot of people in Australia and Melbourne, around the world, that are in what I call the hacker community. And those people are really good people most of the time. They all try to look out for each other, and everyone helps each other out with pretty much everything. You can message somebody at a hack space in Amsterdam and be like, hey, can I come crash here for a few days? Sure, never met, never spoken to you before, it's fine. Everyone's wanting to help out with each other. To make a good community, you have to invest time into that community as well. So people know you because you've done other work, and they love to chat with you about whatever it is that you're interested in. And because you publish some stuff, because you've run some things, yeah, that opens doors. If you don't spend time with the community, or if you don't help the community, then they won't help you back. And all the work that I've ever done since I was a sysadmin, since I was a kid, like, that was all because I knew other people, and they were willing to give me a shot because I could talk to them and was nice to them, and they were nice back. That was it. Time, yeah, just need more time. It's really not a 9-to-5 kind of job. If you're expecting pen testing to be a cool, I'll start work and then go home and then do whatever I want to do, it's not like that. And you might want it to be like that, but it's not. The flip side to that actually is that if you go too hard, you do burn out. And it's an industry where a lot of people do burn out and then either decide at that point whether or not they're going to take a holiday or if they're just going to go and change careers entirely, go into a different field of security. So be aware, don't go too hard. So yeah, summary. It's fun. It's really fun work, and there's lots of different challenges, there's lots of different technologies, lots of different things, places, peoples. Like, it's kept me entertained for a solid 8 years, which nothing else ever has, so that's really good. People are cool, pays well. As juniors, grads, easily get above 60K. If you're a super senior and you're in a good firm, you get 250K plus US. You're working from the US there though. Can involve lots of travel. That can be good if you like traveling. It can be bad if you have family or things, commitments. If you try to maintain a gym membership, well, like, good luck. It starts costing a lot of money, but depending on where you work, they'll help you out with that kind of stuff as well. So it makes it hard to keep a routine, but if you're self-motivated and you have good time control, then it can work out as well. Cons, lots of artificial constraints around the kind of work that we do. If you're a real-world attacker, you can spend as long as you want for until you get bored, basically, on attacking a company website. If you want to deface Microsoft.com, I'm sure if you spend the next 10 years, you'll eventually do it. There's lots of boring overhead. I really dislike the non-technical stuff. Some people don't mind it, some people like it. That's fine. I don't particularly like client-facing work or compute-facing work. That's why I work with computers. It takes up really all of your time. And then when you think, I've got some spare time, you're like, I gotta try something different, which is also security related. You're like, oh wait, I didn't have any spare time after all. All of that requires a lot of self-motivation. So when you finish at 5 p.m., it's only up to you to keep doing stuff, nobody else. So if you don't have that self-motivation, you got problems. That's all. Thanks. Could again submit the bug bounty. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't encourage anyone to go and do anything illegal, but there's a lot of bug bounties out there, and I would highly recommend that people will spend some time looking at those. My only complaint with bug bounties versus consulting work is that bug bounties have also the same artificial limitations that you're only able to touch these assets. Might not necessarily be realistic of what a real world attacker would do. At the same time, they learn a lot more about enumeration, asset discovery than we ever have to do. We're given a list of targets as part of the rules of engagement that we set up with the client when we start working with them. That's our legally binding contract saying that we're only going to touch these systems. If we touch stuff outside that scope, that's not okay. So we don't have to do asset discovery, we don't have to do subdomain brute forcing and enumeration. We do sometimes if they say wildcardcompany.com, but generally they don't. Generally we'll get a list, and that makes our life easier, saves them time, which then saves us time, which then saves them money. So there's a little bit of how much information do they give us versus how much information do we get versus how much we have to discover ourselves. And sometimes companies don't know what their infrastructure is because they've just merged with another company who kept terrible records and has no idea. And so we'll be called in to assess whether or not that company is safe to merge with in terms of an IT standpoint. And often the answer is, hell no. It's some of the worst networks that networks purchased because they merged with another company. The company has known they're going to be purchased for a while, so they're not investing anything in infrastructure, and just everything's a dumpster fire because make it cheaper and thus our profits look better and we want to get sold more. So that's how that works. Yeah.
So do you find it has to be like a parrot sitting on their shoulder when they find a new investment to come straight out to the workforce?
Say it again.
To the workforce?
The parrot shoulder, sorry.
Yeah, you have to sit on their basically shoulder.
Oh yeah.
And just tell them to do the whole stuff.
No, not even. I work with both Joe and Chris, those that don't know.
So it's a definite yes.
There are things that they don't know yet, and that's just an experience thing. And over time, they learn, and then if we have to repeat the same thing 10 times, which usually we don't, then it's good. If we do, then we'll write it on a post-it note and stick it above the monitor. Yeah. Couldn't do dry July, but anyways.
Any other questions?
Yo. So you'll struggle, honestly. Your boss will be real pissed when he has to constantly redo your report findings. And so we have some parts of the report summaries and stuff in the report findings that are pre-canned. So we see the same thing again and again. You always see cross-site scripting. So instead of rewriting that from scratch each time and just bespoke that client, we say, here's the cross-site scripting finding, now plug in the relevant parts. And if there's something unusually interesting about this, then add that as well. Yeah. Absolutely, because we're trying to minimize the amount of time we spend doing report writing, and everyone's trying to do that. But to do that requires you have written those already. So if you're writing them from scratch, which you will often find vulnerabilities that you haven't got a pre-defined template for, yeah, you have to write that from scratch. You have to communicate effectively a technical concept to 2 types of people at once, and that's tricky and that's hard. I would highly recommend spending some time practicing writing and stuff. Questions?
So when you do a vulnerability, are you going into detail how to repair it, or is that their
It's their IT department is the essential thing. It depends on what kind of vulnerability. So we will usually provide generalist advice. So be like, hey, XSS is vulnerable on this server login form. You should filter meta characters from your inputs. We can't say, we don't have access to the source code most of the time. So we can't say, if this line is offending and thus you should fix that. And if it's a third-party application, like a commercial one, say Office 365, we say, oh, we found this weird vulnerability in Office 365. The client doesn't care that we found that. The client wants Microsoft to fix that like right now. So they will send that, we will send that, communicate with Microsoft or the vendor and say, this is an issue, this needs to be fixed. This is how you reproduce that finding, this is how you prove that it is a vulnerability. But this isn't necessarily how to fix it because we don't understand or know your code base. And we don't have time to sit there and understand the code base unless we're doing a specific code review. And very rarely does anyone want us to do an actual code review. I don't know why. James would love it if we did more, but yeah. Infrastructure-wise as well, like we can say, oh, this is missing a patch. You should apply that patch. But there's also sometimes reasons why people don't apply patches because that patch might break compatibility with an older version of something else that's still in use over there, and blah, blah. So we can say, this setting should be enabled, this patch should be applied, but we don't know what the impact of that is. And so it's really up to them, hopefully to have a dev and test environment, to test it there, make sure it doesn't break anything, and then to roll it out to their production environment. And when they do, that it shouldn't break anything, and everyone should be happy. We can test it again later and be like, it's all good.
How do you get a job as a pen tester?
Honestly, no people. That's the best thing. There's plenty of jobs out there, and there's plenty of places hiring, but at the end of the day, it comes down to meeting people, and that's where the community really gets involved. Like who you meet at conferences, who you meet at meetups and stuff, they'll be the ones that you'll end up working with. And if they like you and they like the work that you can do, and they think you're a good fit for their team or good technical capabilities, then that's who will get you a job. You can certainly apply to places as per usual through Seek and whatever else, but that's you and 10,000 other people from all around the world trying to do the same thing. So your mileage may vary. If you have somebody recommend you, that's the fast way, and that's how you hack employment. People.
So with the report, right?
Nice.
You said sometimes you have to write like a report of about 300 pages. How many times have you had to do that over your career?
More than 10.
So you lost count.
Yes. That becomes a bit of a blur after a while.
But not me.
The first, that bank that I mentioned, that was one of those reports. And the client came back and they had QA'd the report. And we do our own internal QA process. So I provide that to my manager then goes and does it. Another member of the team goes and does that. And they'll make sure there's no typos or that kind of stuff. They came back and they're like, you added 2 spaces to this sentence, please change that. You added, you missing a full stop there, or this is capitalized where it shouldn't be, or we don't like the style of that language, it's too, it's not passive enough. Holy shit, they came back with like 10 pages of like tiny little corrections.
Is that political correctness whenever you do anything?
No, it's not political correctness, it's, we,
They feel like words are aggressive.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's a bit
That's potentially a way to put it, but like this is a very unusual circumstance. Most of the time, like clients don't do that, but that is unusual. They did that and they really like went to town as well. And they got some English grad, I'm sure, like sit there and correct that for a week. And then give it back to us, and then we had to go back and fix it. I was like, you have the Word doc, you can fix it yourself and then submit it to yourselves. No, that's not how they do. So, yeah. You quit, all right.
Thank you, Topy, for giving me a night to come down.